For the third time in history, a pair of lefties have won the Cy Young in the same season. Yes, welcome on in to First Pitch for Thursday, November 21st, your source of news, notes, and updates on Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. He's Troy Brock, Troy B Baseball on the Twitter machine. And Troy, I want to get to Roki Sasaki's signing in the offseason. I want to get to what's going on in Tampa Bay with their ballpark situation and how that's a little bit in danger now. The Phillies trying to trade Alec Boehm. I hope you can help me with that one. But first, I want to talk about the Cy Young winners. These were given out last night. And for only the third time in history, two left-handed pitchers won the Cy Young in the same season. 1977, you'll appreciate this, Steve Carlton of the Phillies and Sparky Lyle of the Yankees. In 2002, Barry Zito of the A's and Randy Johnson of the Diamondbacks. And then in 2024, Tarik Skubal of the Detroit Tigers and Chris Sale of the Atlanta Braves. Let's go with the National League one first, because this one was actually closer. Of the 30 votes, Chris Sale got 26 first place votes and 4 second place votes. Zack Wheeler of the Phillies got 4 first place votes, 25 second place votes, and a 4th place vote for Cy Young. One, before we do anything, how awesome of a season was it for Chris Sale as far as leading baseball in ERA, leading baseball in wins, and leading the National League in strikeouts with 225?
Yeah, it was a fantastic season for Chris Sale. I mean, we talked about it earlier this week. Nobody expected Chris Sale to play as much as he did, much less play as good as he did. And he was the best pitcher in baseball, arguably, between him and Skubal this year. And it was an insane season for him. He more than deserved the Cy Young this year, just for winning the Triple Crown in the National League. Anytime a pitcher wins a Triple Crown, they should be the Cy Young. And hats off to Chris Sale for what he was able to do on the mound after years of just being injured consistently while with the Red Sox. So good on Chris Sale for sure.
Yeah, this is a guy who had 7 consecutive finishes but never won it. In 2012, the start of his just dominant run in Chicago with the White Sox, 6th place finish, 5th place finish, 3rd place finish, 4th place finish, 5th place finish. He goes to Boston, 2nd place finish, 4th place finish. And then 2019, he's ERA is a little bit back, 4.40. Doesn't play in 2020 because of injury, and then makes a combined 11 starts the next 2 seasons as he's dealing with stuff. Came back a little bit last year, 20 starts, 4.30 ERA, but not the same Chris Sale that he was earlier in his career. Traded to Atlanta, 2.38 ERA, which is, if my math is right, the 3rd best ERA of his career. 18 wins is the best of his career. 6.2 WAR, 3rd best WAR of his career. He leads baseball again in both ERA, winning percentage, and wins, but he also leads an ERA plus at 174, FIP at 209, strikeout rate 11.4 per 9 innings, and home runs allowed was 0.5 per 9. He allowed 1 home run on average every 18 innings. So just a lot. Like you said, a lot better than we kind of expected based on the recent health of Chris Sale and things like that. There's Phillies fans, and I want to get to this because there was that 4th place vote that we saw. I'm not advocating anybody go out and do anything, but David Brandt, the Associated Press in Arizona, was the one. He had Sale at 1, Paul Skeens at 2. It's the only 2nd place vote Paul Skeens got. Hunter Green at 3. And Zack Wheeler at 4th. When you look at what Wheeler did this year, 32 starts and even 200 innings pitched, why would you pick him for 4th place in the Cy Young over Hunter Green and Paul Skeens?
There's not an answer that makes any sense.
There's not a case, right?
There's not a case at all for Zack Wheeler to get a 4th place vote in the National League Cy Young race. I mean, honestly, because of the hype that we've talked about all week with these awards, I kind of started expecting Paul Skeens to finish second in this voting.
Same, honestly, I wondered.
Yeah, but Zack Wheeler was definitely the second best pitcher in the National League just because of workload. If Paul Skeens had the same amount of innings and starts as Zack Wheeler and Chris Sale, then yeah, he probably would have won it, honestly. But no, there is no case that anyone can make. David Brent can't even make a case for why he gave Zack Wheeler a 4th place vote. I don't know. I don't know if he was drunk when he placed his vote or what the case was, because it makes no sense. And I think that the BBWAA has some thinking to do about some people that they give votes to for these awards.
Honestly, this is the same thing we always say whenever the Hall of Fame voting comes out. And at least that they can stay anonymous if they want to. And some of them have just terrible takes on the Hall of Fame voting. Watch, we haven't talked about the Hall of Fame yet, the class that was just announced this week. We'll definitely get to that in a show. We'll probably do a whole show just talking about the Hall of Fame. But there's going to be somebody who thinks Ichiro is a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I'm not going to vote for him so that he's not unanimous, because that matters for some reason.
Right.
But yeah, it's really hard, I think, to put in Wheeler at 4 with a straight face. I mean, it feels like this is a year where normally Zack Wheeler probably wins the Cy Young. It were it not for Chris Sale, right?
Yep.
I mean, 16-7, 2.57 ERA, again, 200 innings, 224 strikeouts in those 200 innings. It's a very, very good season, a very, very good performance. And I'm going to say it's Cy Young caliber. It just obviously wasn't good enough to win the Cy Young. It's like we talked about some of these National League center fielders, Gold Glove caliber seasons, but because the position's so stacked and there's outliers out there that are so amazing, they don't have a chance to win against those guys. Same thing. This is a Cy Young caliber season for Zack Wheeler. It's just he just didn't have a chance to win because of obviously what Chris Sale did. In the American League, it was unanimous. Tarik Skubal, it's the 3rd consecutive year it has been a unanimous Cy Young winner in the AL. Verlander won it in 22, Garrett Cole in 2023, Tarik Skubal this year on his birthday, actually. He turned 28 the same day he won the Cy Young. He led the AL in wins. He was 18-4, ERA with 2.39, and then led in strikeouts with 2.28. So he led I believe he led all of baseball. Sale had 2.25 and led the National League. And the strikeouts are the reason that Chris Sale did not win the baseball Triple Crown. And there was no baseball Triple Crown winner. There was just AL and NL Triple Crown winners.
Yep.
6th Detroit pitcher to win this. And he's the 7th Triple Crown winner to take the Cy Young Award in the AL. Obviously no complaints here. The 2 big observations I have, though, on this were, 1, 3rd place finisher, Manuel Clase. I feel like we don't see a lot of relievers get the appreciation, and there were questions about would he be recognized for just how dominant he was in the regular season. I'll remind everybody this is a regular season award. They vote on this. I believe they actually vote before the postseason. So he had a 0.61 ERA. He allowed 5 earned runs in 74 1/3 innings, 2 homers. He allowed 10 total runs, but 5 earned runs because he did some 10th inning stuff, and there was some Manfred man runners coming in. Is it like, how awesome is it that a reliever as good as Clase got recognized for what he did?
It's fantastic. It's well past time for a reliever to put up a season like that and get recognized for it, because it's insane what he did. And like you said, giving up only 5 earned runs in that amount of innings that's unheard of. And he's one of, regardless of what he did in the postseason, which was not good. but he is one of, if not the best reliever in baseball right now. And if at a position that's very volatile, where you have players that have a season like this, and then the next year they'll go and put up a 6 ERA, he's not one of those guys. You can expect him to go out and put up a sub 2 ERA each and every year.
Yeah. Last year was a little bit of a struggle for him. He had a 3.22, but outside of that, he had a 129 in 2021, a 136 in 22, and an 061 here. This is his fourth consecutive season of 70-plus appearances. He had 74 here. His third consecutive season of at least 72 or more innings, and that fourth one was 69 and 2/3, so it's still almost 70 innings. Do you feel like maybe some of those postseason struggles are connected to how much he gets used in the regular season? Because you look at 2022, 2 1/3 innings in the postseason, scoreless, right? They won the wild card against the Tampa Bay Rays, and then they go to the ALDS against the Yankees, another 3 2/3, 1 hit, no runs. He picks up a win, actually, but they lose the series to the Yankees. But this year, we talked about how bad he was. 8 innings, 8 runs allowed on 12 hits with 3 homers. He allowed just almost as many homers. He allowed more homers in the postseason this year than he did in the entire regular season. Is it possible that this is connected, that using him 70-plus times in the regular season, almost half the team's games, it means that when he gets to October, he's just worn down and not as effective? Or is that just, it's too small of a sample size in the postseason for us to draw any real conclusions out of it?
I could see there being a connection there, and we have talked about the relievers in the postseason this podcast before. It was a trend across baseball. All relievers really were not good in the postseason, and a lot of that could have been usage for some guys, especially Class A, with how much they used him, and a lot of that could have also been in the way that he was used. I don't remember exactly the way that he was used. I'd have to go back and look at it, but I know that there were a bunch of other teams and other relievers that would come in and in one inning with a big adrenaline dump to get one out, and then have to go sit down in the dugout for a while, and then come back out in the next inning to try to get another inning out of them to kind of extend their bullpen usage. And it just did not work in those cases really ever in the postseason. And you're facing a lot better hitters in the postseason than you do in the regular season, because you're not facing teams like the Chicago White Sox or the Los Angeles Angels or teams like that. And so there's a lot of things that play into it, but I think the amount of usage that they've had on him over the years is also a big part of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's you throw so on. I think some of that for me is you throw a lot, but also when you're in the postseason and you're seeing some of the same teams in a 5 or 7 game series, and you're going 4 times against the same team, I feel like that also provides a bit of a disadvantage. It's and there's been a little bit of research on this, not as much as the third time through the order penalty for starters, but it's the same concept about when a team sees the same reliever in multiple games, especially back-to-back games and things like that, it becomes a little bit easier to be comfortable with what they're trying to do to you. Yep. And I talk a lot about pitching is just make the hitter uncomfortable. Whether it's through your velocity, it's through your pitch movement, your pitch selection, your sequencing, whatever. And it feels like no matter how good your stuff, you can throw 100-mile-an-hour cutters all day. When they see it in 3 straight games, it feels like they're going to be a little more comfortable trying to hit it. So I'm sure that's a big part of it. The other big takeaway I have here in the Cy Young voting in the American League is the Royals had 2 top guys in the top 4. Seth Lugo was the runner-up. He got 14 second-place votes, finished with 93 points. Possible 210 if you get all first-place votes like Skubal did. And then Cole Reagans came in 4th place. He got 3 second-place votes, a total of 48 points because he got both 3rd, 4th, and 5th-place votes in there. When we talk about the Royals making that turnaround from losing 100 games to making the postseason, what is a bigger, I guess, if you had to ascribe, not blame, but why Is it a bigger deal that Bobby Witt ascended into MVP runner-up, which we expect tonight, MVP runner-up performance, or that the pitching staff made such a drastic turnaround behind Lugo and Reagans?
Not trying to take anything away from Bobby Witt here, but I think that the bigger reason for why is the drastic turnaround that the rotation had. Because if you look at their ERAs just from 2023 to 2024, in 2023, the Kansas City Royals starting rotation had a 5.12 ERA.
Gross.
For the whole season, ranked 27th in baseball. In 2024, their starters had a 3.55 ERA.
Ooh.
Yeah, over almost a full run and a half per game for their starters, and went from ranked 27th to ranked second in baseball. Yeah, so
Golly.
that's a massive turnaround just in one season. So I think that was a big reason for their success this year, along with Bobby Witt Jr.
And kind of looking at, like, I'm on Baseball Reference right now looking at this. I feel like they had some pretty great health. They only used 9 starters all year, and 2 of those guys started 1 game apiece, right? Jonathan Bowlen started 1 game. Dan Altavilla started 1 game. Outside of that, Daniel Lynch had 3, and then it was the core 5 in the rotation. I'm sorry, Michael Lorenzen had 6. I'm sorry. Lorenzen had 6. His 7 games with Kansas City, 6 were starts. Lorenzen had 6. Daniel Lynch had 3. And everything else was the core 5 in the rotation. And all 4 of those 5 had ERAs under 4. Lugo was at a 3. He led baseball in starts with 33. He led the American League in batters faced with 836. Cole Reagans had a 3.14 ERA, led the American League in strikeouts at 10.8 per 9. And then Brady Singer, 371. Michael Wacha, 335. Part of me wonders what Kansas City has to do to improve offensively, because I don't know if you can bank on this happening again. We've heard a little bit of rumors about maybe they're trying to trade somebody in the rotation to get some offensive help. But just that health that those guys had and the performance, it feels like this is something where the most reasonable thing to do is expect some regression. So Kansas City needs to focus on getting better offensively to pick up that slack, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about it earlier this week. They need to bring somebody in to help their outfield offense, because their outfield offense is just atrocious across the board. You have Bobby Witt Jr. doing enough for the entire infield. Bobby Witt Jr. and Salvador Perez in the infield, and Vinny P. But if you can bring in somebody to just lift the production from the outfield, then you've got a really good offense to go with a pitching staff who, even if they do regress, is still pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, even if they just have a normal, 5 or 10% reduction in performance, that's still a top 10 rotation, it feels like, as of now, pending, obviously, everybody doing stuff in free agency. So I do think the future's bright there for the Royals, but I do think that you can't, and this is where I think fans sometimes get things wrong. You saw the Braves fans do this after 2023, assuming that offense was going to be just as good as it was when it was one of the best, not only in baseball in 23, but that we'd ever seen. I mean, They tied the all-time home run record in a single season. The team slugging was over 500, right? And then this is a situation where this Royals rotation was one of the best in baseball, incredibly healthy. They all performed well. And that's another situation where it feels like fans just assume that's going to happen again. And a lot of things have to break right for it to work out like it did. And, you're not going to get through a season using really 7 starters. Like, that's just not how it works. Most teams use 10, 12 guys over the course of a year. I think the Brewers use something like 18 different starters or something nuts like that.
Wow.
So, yeah, it feels like you just have to, that's not an exact number. It's more than 15 out of that. And so it feels like they got to do more to reinforce the rest of the roster. And then is it realistic to run it back with that same group in the rotation? I think it absolutely is. Run it back, right? But you got to reinforce the rest of the roster to pick up from any potential drops in performance from that top group. since you're a Philly guy, so in my mind, the segue there was Philly also had a really great rotation, but I just didn't say that, which doesn't help a lot of people listening to the show. You're a Philly guy. Can we talk about the fact that they're wanting to trade Alec Boehm? Because on the outside, to people like me who watch Philly, but I'm like, okay, he was an all-star. He batted .280 with a 779 OPS. Not a ton of home runs. He hit 15 homers, right? But he drove in almost 100. He played decent defense at third base. It felt like he was just ripping a bunch of doubles all the time. He had like 40-something doubles. Why would a team trade a guy like that who is not even going to hit arbitration, I think, for the first time? Is it for the first time next year, or was he arbitration this year?
I think it's the second time this year.
Yeah. He was at $4 million in 24. Why would you be trading a guy like Alec Boehm? And how do you realistically expect to upgrade in this third base market we currently have?
An upgrade at third base in this market, in this economy?
In this economy?
Buckle up,
in this free agent economy? There you go. This free agent economy.
Yeah, so there is a lot of things that will have led to this potential trade of Alec Boehm. For the entirety of his career, back up to 2020 when he debuted, he was one of the best hitters in baseball in 2020. The year that he put up in his debut season was fantastic. And he was a first-round pick of the Philadelphia Phillies a couple years before that. Go ahead.
I was context of that. He was runner-up for Rookie of the Year to Devin Williams of the Brewers, who went 4-1 with an 0.33 ERA in relief. Alec Boehm in 2020 batted .338 with an 881 OPS. Not a ton of home runs, 4 homers in 44 games, but just looked freaking amazing in that short season.
Yeah, and he's not a home run guy. He tries to be, and I think that's part of the reason for some of the things that we will get to shortly. Mm-hmm. But he tries to be a home run guy, but he's not. We talked about it the other day. He is at his best when all he is doing is trying to put the ball in the gaps, going left center field and right center field, driving doubles and triples, and he is a very, very emotional player. Anytime he strikes out or makes an error, you remember probably because it was national news a couple years ago, he made a couple of errors in the same inning, and he said, "I effing hate this place."
Yeah, because I remember because he made like a routine throw. It was like the second error. He made a routine throw to first for the out, and Phillies fans cheered him. He said that, and then he made another error before the inning ended. Like he made a third error in that inning. I remember that.
Yep. And so, but there's just, if he strikes out, he'll slam his bat. It's not even if it's a big strikeout. It can be the second inning of a scoreless ball game with nobody on base. He's the first out of the inning. He'll slam his bat on the ground. He'll walk back to the dugout with his head down, banging his hat on his helmet. He'll throw stuff in the dugout, and he just has all these temper tantrums. And he's a 28-year-old man who should not be having these temper tantrums on a baseball field because it's not that serious. And Rob Thompson has had to take him into the clubhouse multiple times this season and be like, "Hey, you got to cool it." And
chill.
It's you're a grown man, act like it. And it has not worked. And even in the day that the Phillies were eliminated from the postseason, Tim Kelly of Ohm Pattinson asked him about the last few weeks of the year, and if Boehm believes he got to a bit of a crossroad heading into 2025. Boehm's under team control through 2026, going into his second arbitration year. And he said, "No, I know where I'll be next year." And it's comments like that. And it's the emotional just outburst that he has on a consistent basis, literally every game. Like it's every game. If he strikes out, grounds out, it's every game he has emotional outbursts like that. And I think that a lot of that, plus him still trying to be the home run hitter that he's not, and just kind of killing his entire approach at the plate, which was very detrimental to the Phillies in the postseason. I think a lot of that is just why the Phillies are like, I mean, we tried and it's just not working. We're going to see if we can move on and find somebody else to play third base.
Yeah, it's set up to be really interesting. You feel like the way that Phillies operated by going out and getting stars, there's an option here for them to do something. Maybe they trade for like a Nolan Arenado. Maybe they sign a guy like an Alex Bregman. I do think that Bregman is going to play for longer than Arenado is. I feel like Bregman gives you a logjam going forward because he's going to have to move to second base because of his arm. Trey Turner's going to have to move to second base because of his arm and his defense or the outfield. You still end up having issues with shortstop and things like that. But
Aiden Miller too.
Aiden Miller. It's entirely possible. We mentioned it the other day, and I kind of just said it in passing, talking about Jonathan India. I feel like Alec Boehm's a fit for the Royals to put him at third base or at second. You can do either one. Maikel Garcia is a better arm. You can leave Garcia at third. You can put Boehm at second. Boehm's batted over 300 in the few times he's DH'd. He can cover first base as well. So can Salvador Perez. Vinny P is obviously your guy there. He can lead off. He's only batted lead off one game in his entire career, but he's done pretty decently. It feels like that's a good fit for because I see why he's not as valuable and teams aren't beating down the door to trade for him because he's an odd profile for third base, right? Most third basemen are power hitters. He's not really that, but he also doesn't have the sprint speed to be a stolen base threat. He stole, I think, a career high 5 bases this year. Yeah. And so it's something he's a contact hitter who gets extra base hits despite the lack of speed. And there is a valuable role for that. I do feel like he's better fit for second base than third for a lot of teams just based on how they like to scout him. But either way, it does feel like they're ready to move on from him. I'm curious to see what happens there. And if Philly can meaningfully replace him with somebody that maybe either better fits their roster building philosophy of let's find stars or fits from a power and prototypical third baseman fit going forward. I'm curious to see what happens with that. But definitely an interesting kind of development for, again, a guy you wouldn't think a career 277 hitter would be on the block, but for the reasons you mentioned, he's kind of just ran out of he's ran out of grace in Philly with the coaching staff and with the front office. A couple other quick stories I want to touch on. Rob Manfred spoke to the media, which always questionable how that's going to go, but he was discussing the Tampa Bay Rays, right? We knew that Tropicana Field had damage from Hurricane Milton. They weren't going to be able to play there next year. They've since announced they'll be playing their home games at George M. Steinbrenner Field in Tampa, spring training home of the New York Yankees. Fun fact, I believe it's $15 million that they'll owe the Yankees to do that. The Yankees are now the highest paid player on the Rays roster for next season. But Manfred addressed the new ballpark. It was set to open in 2028. It's a joint venture between Pinellas County, between the city of St. Pete, a bunch of different entities who are all involved as things are like that. The Pinellas County Commission has now twice pushed back the vote slated for October originally to issue bonds to pay for the county's part of the stadium. It's $312.5 million coming from tourist tax revenue. Now, officially, they delayed these votes because of Hurricanes Helene and Milton, and we understand that's a big thing to deal with. And somebody clarified that this money coming from tourist taxes is not something that could be used to rebuild housing and things like that. It's only available for things like this, right? For ballparks, for parks and things like that, and different things that would help with tourism. But also, since the election now, 2 other commissioners who are in there, who are now in office, are against this whole proposal. And so the Rays are making it sound like it's unlikely the ballpark's going to get built. Rob Manfred's confident in this. How confident are you that the Tampa Bay Rays are, in fact, going to get this $300-something million in bonds issued, and that they will be able to play in a new ballpark by 2028 in St. Pete, where it's supposed to be?
Yeah, Rob Manfred is a very optimistic person and always wants to have the higher outlook on things.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to lean more towards the way the Tampa Bay Rays feel about this, because I feel like they are a little more in touch with things about their potential stadium than Rob Manfred is, and
Yeah.
so I'm with the Tampa Bay Rays. It might not happen. They might need to try and diversify their bonds.
Shout out Wu-Tang for that. Wu-Tang Financial for that. Yeah, this is something where we've seen a lot of backlash growing backlash across the country at paying for private facilities. Part of the reason that the Oakland Raiders and then the Oakland A's left Oakland was because they felt like the offers that they were made by the city to help fund a new stadium were not enough, and that they needed more public money. Their billionaire owners needed more public money to build these stadiums. Tampa Bay is in a similar thing. I believe the original deal that was agreed to by everybody had the owner of the Rays not actually putting in very much, or if any, of his own money in the new ballpark. And as we see these things go on, part of the reason that Fisher pulled the A's out of out of Oakland and moved them to Las Vegas was, one, he just wanted to get out of Oakland. But two, Vegas was going to give him money to build a ballpark. Rob Manfred considers these two things settled, right? Like, they're going to make sure the Rays get the ballpark funding passed, but they consider this done. I kind of think I'm with you. I'm between Manfred and the Rays. I don't think the Rays' new stadium's dead, but I am more concerned than Rob Manfred is that you're gonna have trouble getting these commissioners to approve $300 and something million in bonds to pay for a stadium that's going to get paid back by tourist tax revenue, even though they can't use that tourism tax revenue on hurricane recovery. It's a bad look right now. And I would argue that I'm sure at least one of those commissioners got elected because they're against this whole plan, showing that the public's not 100% behind it. So, Manfred says they're fine. I'm a little concerned. We'll see what happens. I am really curious. He has said before he leaves office, I believe 2028 is when he'll be done. I say office like it's elected. I mean, they hired him. But he want these two teams, the A's and the Rays, will be in their new stadiums. They're going to have the two next cities for expansion selected that would raise it to 32 teams across baseball. And they're going to have the national streaming product in place. Put you on the spot here. Give me odds, like a percentage odds on all three of those things happening by 2028.
I'd probably say 10% that all three happen. 10 to 15%. I think the most likely to happen is probably the streaming service, and then after that, probably the cities selected, and then the stadiums.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I still have a lot of questions about if Oakland's going to get done or not. I mean, I'm sorry, if the A's, the Athletics, are going to get done or not. From what I understand, Vegas has not yet unveiled or has not yet confirmed the financing is in place. Fisher has not found the rest of the private financing that he needs for that ballpark, according to their agreement. And construction has not started. And so they're going to play in a minor league ballpark for the next few seasons. And the president of the A's already said they're focused on improving their team via trade, because the initial feedback they're getting is a lot of free agents are not interested in signing to play in a minor league park in Sacramento for a couple seasons. So they're focused on trades to improve their lineup and their roster, because free agents don't want to go there. And I just don't see right now, it doesn't feel like they're going to get it done, because Fisher has been so reluctant to spend his own money like a cheapskate. Let's be honest. He's being cheap here. The man's worth billions of dollars.
Right.
But he doesn't want to spend his own money on a ballpark, and he's finding just less and less interest in public money going to subsidize a billionaire's new building. So we'll see what happens. I think I'm with you. I'm probably maybe 15, 20%. I think you may see the A's stadium the Rays will figure out something. You may see the A's stadium get done simply because I think worst case scenario, they'll force him to sell, or they'll force him to spend his own money before to get something done, because I don't think the league loves the idea of a minor league ballpark in 28. I think the league would have rather had them stay in Oakland
Yeah.
at the Coliseum until the new ballpark was ready. But either way, that's neither here nor there. This has been First Pitch for Thursday, November 21st. If you're listening on audio, do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review with some nice words for Troy. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. Also, leave us a 5-star review. We really do like the words of affirmation. And until next time, this has been First Pitch.